His stares hung cold and distant in the black sky above Viridian 3. The air was thin and sharp, laced with dust and the faint smell of rust. The ground cracked underfoot, dry and broken. This was not a kind world, but it was the only one they had. A small group of humans moved across the red plain, their boots kicking up puffs of ochre dust. They wore patched suits, helmets cracked and sealed with tape. One of them, a man named Jake, walked at the front. He was broad-shouldered, his face lined with years of sun and wind. His eyes never stopped moving, scanning the horizon, the sky, the shadows between rocks. He had been a soldier once, back on Earth, before the fall. Now he was just a survivor. But survival had made him hard. Behind him, Lisa adjusted the strap of her pack. She was smaller, quieter, but her hands were steady. She carried a medkit, a scanner, and a knife she never showed to anyone. She had been a biologist, studying life in the last green places of Earth. Now she studied how to keep people alive in a place that wanted them dead. They were not alone. Others followed. Danny, the young engineer who could make anything work. Carl, the farmer who knew how to grow food in dust. Maria, the teacher who remembered every name, every face, every loss. They were not heroes. They were just people who had lived through the end of the world and kept walking. Their destination was the outpost, a cluster of domes and tunnels built into the side of a canyon. It had been a research base once, abandoned by some long-gone alien race. The humans had found it by accident, drifting in a broken ship with no fuel and no hope. They had fixed what they could, buried what they could not, and made it home. As they approached, the air grew heavier. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with something else. A shadow. Jake stopped. He raised a hand. Everyone froze. "Something's wrong," he said. Lisa looked up. Her scanner beeped once, then went silent. No signals. No movement. But the power's still on. Danny frowned. "That doesn't make sense. If the lights are on, someone should be answering our comms." Jake didn't answer. He was already moving, crouched low toward the main entrance. The others followed, quiet now, weapons in hand. Even Carl, who hated guns, carried a rifle he had learned to use the hard way. The door was open. Not broken, not forced, just open, as if someone had walked out and forgotten to close it. Inside, the lights flickered. The air was warm, too warm. The hum of the generators was there, but it was uneven, like a heartbeat skipping. They moved through the corridors, checking rooms, calling out. No one answered. Then they found the first body. It was Pete, the night watchman. He lay near the comms room, his helmet off, his face frozen in shock. No blood, no wounds, just dead. Lisa knelt beside him. She checked his vitals, though she already knew. Then she saw it. A small puncture on his neck, almost invisible. "Poison," she whispered. Fast, silent. Jake looked at the comms panel. The last message was still on the screen. A single line of text. They came from the sky. No date. No time. Just that. The others gathered around. Fear was in their eyes, but not panic. Not yet. They had seen death before. They had buried too many. "How many?" Carl asked. Jake shook his head. "Don't know, but they didn't come to talk." That night, they sealed the base. They turned off all external lights. They set up motion sensors, tripwires, and alarms made from old cans and wire. Danny rewired the security cameras to feed into a single screen. They took shifts. No one slept. And then, just before dawn, the sensors screamed. Movement. At the East Ridge, Jake was at the monitor in seconds. The grainy image showed figures, tall, armored, moving in perfect silence. They were not human. Their suits were black, angular, reflecting no light. Their helmets were smooth, featureless. They carried weapons that looked like fused bone and metal. "Cathar," Danny said, his voice tight. "I've seen their ships in the old data files. They're raiders, slavers. They take what they want and burn the rest." Jake watched as the figures spread out surrounding the outpost. They didn't rush. They didn't shout. They moved like hunters who already knew the prey was theirs. "They think we're weak," Jake said. "They think we'll beg. They think we'll break." Lisa loaded her rifle. "Let's teach them better. The first attack came at sunrise. A blast tore through the eastern dome. Fire and smoke filled the air. 3 humans died before they could reach cover. The Cathar poured in, silent, efficient. They moved like shadows, cutting down anyone in their path. But Jake was ready. He had turned the tunnels into a maze. Every corridor had traps, falling debris, electrified floors, gas vents Lisa had rigged from medical supplies. The Cathar advanced, but for everyone that entered, 2 more fell. One warrior stepped into a side room, the door sealed behind him. Seconds later, the vents hissed. When they opened the door an hour later, the warrior was dead, his armor cracked from within. Lisa had filled the room with a gas that reacted to their breathing, crystallizing in their lungs. Another Cathar unit tried to breach the main power core. Danny had rerouted the coolant lines. When they cut through the wall, superheated steam erupted, boiling 2 of them where they stood. But the humans were dying too. Carl took a plasma bolt to the leg. He dragged himself behind a console and kept firing. Maria was hit in the shoulder, but she crawled to a comm station and sent a distress signal on every frequency she could find. It wouldn't reach anyone in time, but she sent it anyway. By the 3rd day, only 12 humans were left. The Cathar had lost more, but they kept coming. They didn't care about their dead. They left them where they fell. Jake sat in the command bunker, his face streaked with soot and blood. His rifle was empty. He had 1 knife left. Lisa handed him a cup of dirty water. "They'll breach the last door soon," he nodded. "When they do, we fight." "We can't win," she said. "We don't have to win," Jake said. "We just have to make them remember." That night, the final assault began. The Cathar brought a battering ram made from a broken ship's hull. They smashed through the last door and flooded in. The humans were waiting. They fought with knives, with fire, with bare hands. They pulled Cathar into traps and blew themselves up with grenades. Maria grabbed a dying enemy's weapon and fired until it melted in her hands. Carl, lying on the floor, pulled a grenade from his belt and rolled under a group of warriors. The explosion took out 6 of them. Jake fought like a man with nothing left to lose. He broke a Cathar's neck with a pipe, stole his weapon, and used it to cut down 3 more. When his leg was shattered by a blast, he crawled to a control panel and triggered the base's self-destruct sequence. Lisa was the last to fall. She stood in the center of the bunker, a data pad in one hand, a pistol in the other. On the screen was a message she had recorded. Images of the dead, names, voices, the song they used to sing on Earth. "If anyone finds this," she said, her voice calm, "know that we did not beg. We did not run. We fought. And we made them pay." Then she fired the pistol into the main power line. The explosion lit up the sky for miles. The canyon collapsed. The outpost vanished under rock and fire. When the Covenant scouts arrived 3 days later, they found only silence. The Cathar force was gone. So were the humans. But in the rubble, they found something, scratched into the side of a broken wall, in rough, uneven letters, "We do not break." The scouts stared at it. One of them, a being with silver skin and no mouth, touched the words with a trembling hand. He did not understand. Not yet, but he would, because the war was just beginning, and the galaxy would learn, one name at a time, why it should fear the humans. The explosion on Viridian 3 lit up the edge of the outer rim like a dying star. The shockwave rippled through space, knocking out sensors on a Covenant scout ship 3 systems away. When the dust settled, there was nothing left but a crater and silence. The Cathar fleet that had attacked the human outpost was gone. All 53 warships vanished. The Covenant assumed they had retreated. They were wrong. Deep in the void, a single escape pod drifted. Inside was Lisa. She was alive, barely. Her suit was cracked, her arm broken, her lungs burned from the blast. She had been thrown clear by the explosion, knocked unconscious before. The base collapsed. The pod systems were dead. No power, no comms. Just her in the dark. She woke to the sound of her own breathing. Slow. Weak. The air was thin. She checked the oxygen gauge. 12 hours left. Maybe less. She didn't panic. She never did. Instead, she opened the pod's log and began to speak. This is Lisa from the Ark Nova colony. If anyone finds this, Viridian 3 is gone. The Cathar attacked. We fought. We killed many. Jake is dead. Carl is dead. Maria is dead. Danny is gone. I don't know how I survived, but I did. And I will tell what happened. She paused, wincing as she adjusted her arm. They came like shadows. They thought we were weak. They thought we would beg. We didn't. We made them bleed. We made them die. And when the end came, we took as many as we could. The base is gone. But we are not forgotten. She closed the log and sealed it in the memory core. Then she waited. 3 days. Later, a Covenant salvage drone found the pod. They pulled it in, scanned it, and sent the data to the Council. When the High Envoy, a tall being of shifting light, watched the recording, he did not speak for a long time. Then he said one word. Humans. Back in human space, the survivors of other colonies heard the news. Not from the Covenant, not from any official source. They heard it through the old networks. The whispers passed from ship to ship, from world to world. Viridian 3 is gone. The Cathar attacked. The humans fought. They all died. But they took the enemy with them. Among them was a young man named Paul. He lived on a mining station near the edge of the belt. He had never met Jake or Lisa, but he had heard their names. Everyone had. Paul was not a soldier. He fixed engines. He liked quiet nights and hot coffee. But when he heard what happened, something changed in him. He looked at the stars and saw not peace, but war. And he knew he could not look away. Meanwhile, the Cathar were not idle. Their high command was furious. Viridian 3 was supposed to be an easy conquest, a minor colony. Yet they had lost an entire fleet, over 2,000 warriors dead. Their pride was wounded. Their fear was growing. Their leader, Vorak the Unbroken, stood in the war chamber of his flagship, the Maw. His armor was black, his eyes burning red. He watched the reports from the wreckage. Humans, he growled, primitive, weak, yet they kill my best warriors like insects do not. His general, Krell, bowed low. They do not fight like other species. They do not surrender. They do not flee. They fight to the last breath. Even the children we captured. They bit the guards. They spat in their faces. Vorak slammed his fist on the table. Then we erase them. Not just the colony. All of them. Every human ship. Every outpost. Every soul. We will burn their worlds and scatter their bones to the void. And so the Cathar prepared. But the humans were not waiting. Paul and others like him, men and women from a dozen scattered colonies, began to move. They had no fleet. No weapons of mass destruction. But they had something else. Knowledge. They studied the Cathar. They hacked into old data streams. They found patterns in their attacks, weaknesses in their ships. Paul spent nights in the engine room, tearing apart a captured Cathar drone, learning how it worked. Their shields are strong, he told a small group in a hidden bunker on Ceres Station. But they don't handle sudden heat. If we can overload a reactor near them, it might blind their systems. A woman named Nina, a pilot with sharp eyes and sharper instincts, nodded. We can use solar flares, time it right, and we fly through. The storm. They can't follow. Another man, George, who had lost his family to a Cathar raid, said nothing. He just sharpened his knife. They had no uniforms, no ranks, no grand plan. They were just people who refused to forget. When the Cathar fleet finally came, 50 warships, massive and dark, moving like a storm across the sky. The humans were ready, not to win, but to fight. The first strike came from the asteroids. Paul had rigged old mining charges to remote triggers. As the Cathar fleet passed through the belt, the charges exploded, sending chunks of rock flying at high speed. One warship took a direct hit. Its hull cracked. It spun out of control and vanished into the gravity well of a gas giant. The Cathar did not slow. They sent fighters to clear the area. But the fighters flew into a trap. Nina and 3 other pilots waited in the shadow of a moon. Their ships were old, patched, barely spaceworthy. But they were fast. They hit hard and fast. Missiles, rail, Guns, even EMP pulses made from stolen tech. 2 Cathar fighters exploded. A third crashed into its own carrier. Then they were gone, vanishing into the dark. Vorak was enraged. They hide like rats. Kill one, 10 more appear. They are not rats, Krell said quietly. Rats run. These things, they come back. On the ground, George led a team through the tunnels beneath Mars Colony. They planted charges in the water lines, the power grid, the air vents. When the Cathar landed, they found a city with no power, no water, no heat, and then the traps began. George watched from a hidden perch as Cathar soldiers walked into a maintenance shaft. He pressed the button. The floor gave way. They fell into a pit lined with sharpened metal. Another group entered a dormitory. The vents hissed. Lisa's old poison recreated from her notes filled the room. They died choking, clawing at their helmets. Day after day, the Cathar pushed forward. But for every step, they paid in blood. Paul's team hit their supply lines. They stole fuel, destroyed drones, sabotaged engines. One night, they boarded a Cathar cargo ship and planted a reactor core set to overload. It blew up inside the flagship's hangar, killing hundreds. Vorak screamed for vengeance. He ordered orbital bombardment, but the humans were not in the cities. They were in the tunnels, in the craters, in the dark places where no Cathar warrior wanted to go, and they kept fighting. On the 13th night, Paul made a decision. There was a Cathar scout ship docked near the asteroid base. Small, fast, lightly guarded. "We take it," he said. Nina looked at him. "You're crazy, that's suicide." "Maybe," Paul said. "But if we fly it into their flagship's reactor, it might be enough." George stood up. He didn't speak. He just grabbed his pack and walked to the door. That night, they moved. 4 of them. No helmets, no backup. Just guns, knives, and a stolen access code. They slipped through the outer defenses, killed 2 guards with silenced shots, and boarded the ship. The Cathar inside never saw it coming. Paul fired up the engines. The alarms blared. The flagship turned toward them. Nina took the controls. "Hold on!" She flew straight at the flagship, riding the edge of a solar flare, using the radiation to mask their signal. The Cathar guns fired, but the shots went wide. At the last second, Paul set the ship to autopilot. "Go," he said. They jumped into an escape pod just as the scout ship hit the flagship's reactor core. The explosion was blinding. A chain reaction tore through the vessel. It broke in half, then collapsed in on itself, vanishing in a fireball of light. The remaining Cathar ships hesitated. Then, one by one, they turned and fled. When the Covenant arrived the next day, they found the debris field and the escape pod. Paul, Nina, and George were alive. Barely. The envoy looked at them, then at the wreckage. "Why?" he asked. "Do you fight so hard?" Paul, his face burned, his voice weak, looked up. "Because we remember, and we do not forgive." The envoy said nothing. But that night, he sent a message across the galaxy. Do not provoke the humans, because the war was not over, and now the humans were just getting started. The explosion of the Cathar flagship lit up the outer rim for days. Debris floated like dark snow, caught in the gravity of dead worlds. The remaining Cathar ships had fled, broken and silent. The humans had won. But there was no cheering, no songs, only exhaustion and grief. Paul sat on the edge of the escape pod, his hands wrapped in burnt cloth. His face was pale, his breath shallow. Nina leaned against the hull, her eyes closed, trying to stop the shaking. George stood apart, staring at the stars. He said nothing. He had lost 2 brothers in the Mars colony raid. Now he had taken his revenge. But it did not feel like victory. The Covenant ship that found them was silver and smooth, shaped like a leaf on water. It opened its bay and pulled the pod inside. The airlock hissed. A tall being of pale light stepped forward. It spoke without moving its face. "You are alive," it said. Paul nodded. "Barely. Your kind fought without mercy," the being said. "You destroyed a Cathar fleet with no fleet of your own." "We had nothing," Paul said. "Just each other." The envoy looked at George. "Why did you do it? You could have run, hidden, survived." George turned slowly. His voice was low, Rough. They killed my family. They burned our homes. They think we are weak because we feel, but that is wrong. We feel too much, and that makes us dangerous. The envoy did not answer. Back in human space, the news spread. Not through official channels, not through the Covenant, through the old ways. Voice to voice, text to text. A single line repeated across 100 worlds. The Cathar attacked. The humans broke them. On a small farming colony orbiting a red star, a woman named Ellen heard the news. She was old, her hands worn from years of work. She had survived the fall of Earth. She had buried her husband, her daughter, her grandson. She sat in her garden, the last green place for light years, and cried. Not from sadness, from pride. They remember, she whispered. They still fight. And so, more joined. Not soldiers, not warriors, farmers, teachers, engineers, doctors, people who had spent years just trying to survive. Now they wanted more. They wanted justice. They began to organize. Not under one leader, not under one flag, but under one idea: we do not forget. Paul, Nina, and George became symbols. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. Meetings were held in hidden stations, in asteroid tunnels, in the basements of broken cities. Plans were made, not for war, for memory. Lisa's data core was found in the wreckage of Viridian 3. It contained everything: the names of the dead, the records of the attacks, the final messages. It was copied, sent, saved in 100 places. Nina used it to track Cathar movements. She found patterns, supply routes, hidden bases, one by one. She marked them. They think they can hide, she said. But we see them. George trained others, not in battle, in survival, in silence. He taught them how to move without sound, how to kill without hesitation, how to endure. They don't fear death, he said, so we make them fear life. We make them look over their shoulder. We make them know that no matter where they run, we will find them. And they did. A Cathar outpost on a frozen moon was found empty. No bodies. No signs of battle. Just a single message carved into the wall. You took Carl's son, we took yours. A supply ship vanished near the Helios belt. Later, its wreckage was found, drifting. Inside, the crew was dead. Not from weapons. From poison. The same kind used on Viridian 3. A high-ranking Cathar officer was found in his quarters, his throat cut. Beside him, a photo of a human child, burned and blackened. A note in broken Cathar script. This was Amy. She was 6. You killed her. We remember. The Cathar began to panic. Their leaders ordered tighter security, more patrols. But it did not help. The humans were not attacking with ships or bombs. They were attacking with time, with memory. One night, a Cathar warlord named Vrax awoke to find a small box on his desk. Inside was a single human tooth and a data chip. He played it. It showed a village on fire, children screaming, a woman begging, then a Cathar soldier shooting her in the head. The voice that followed was calm. You led that raid. We know your face. We know your ship. We know where you sleep. Sleep well, Vrax. He destroyed the chip. But he did not sleep again. Meanwhile, the humans did not stop. Ellen, the old woman from the Red Star, started a school, not for weapons, for history. She taught the children the names of the dead, the stories of the fallen. She made them memorize every face, every loss. They want us to forget, she said, but memory is our weapon, and it never runs out. Paul traveled from colony to colony. He did not speak of victory, he spoke of duty. We are not here to rule, he said. We are here to answer. Every life they took, we return. Not in hate, in balance. Nina led small teams into enemy space. They did not conquer. They hunted. They found Cathar outposts, recorded their crimes, then destroyed them, always leaving a message, always naming the dead. George went silent. No one saw him for months. Then reports came in. A Cathar training camp burned to the ground. A weapons factory collapsed. A fleet commander found dead in his bed, a knife in his chest, a list of human names taped to his chest. The galaxy began to change. Alien species who had once ignored humanity now watched. The Covenant issued no warnings, but their ships avoided. Cathar space. They did not help. They did not interfere. They just waited, and the whispers grew. In a bar on a distant moon, a drunk trader laughed and said the humans were no threat. A Zalvorn warrior, tall and silent, leaned over and said one thing. "You never saw what they left on Zarvul? Bones in a circle, names carved in stone, and one word, remember." The trader shut up. On a children's world, parents quieted their kids by saying, "Be good, or the humans will know." Even the Cathar began to change. They stopped raiding human colonies. Then they stopped raiding near them. Then they pulled back, deeper into their own space. Fear had taken root, but the humans did not stop, because they knew something the galaxy did not yet understand. This was not revenge. This was a promise that no act would go unanswered. No life forgotten, no evil unpunished. They were not an empire, not an army. They were a memory, and memory does not die. It waits, it watches, and when the time comes, it speaks. One night, Paul stood on a hill overlooking a new colony. Lights flickered. Below, children played. Someone was singing an old Earth song. Nina walked up beside him. "Do you think it will ever end?" He looked at the stars. "No, but it doesn't have to. As long as we remember, we win." George appeared from the dark, his coat heavy, his eyes hard. Another base found, deeper in Cathar space. They held humans there for years. Paul did not hesitate. "Then we go." Nina nodded. George turned. They walked into the night, and far away, in the silent halls of Cathar Command, a general woke in fear. He did not know why. He only knew the feeling. Cold, deep, certain. Something was coming, and it remembered his name. His ship moved through the dark without lights. No signal, no name, just a shadow among shadows. Its hull was blackened, patched with metal from a dozen different wrecks. Inside, the air was cold and still. 5 humans sat in silence. Paul, Nina, George, Ellen, and a young man named Tom, who had lost his sister in the Cathar camps. They did not speak. There was nothing left to say. They had found the base on a dead world called Zarvul. No sun warmed it. No wind blew. Just ice and rock and silence. The Cathar had built it deep under the surface, hidden from sensors, from eyes, from time. It was not a military post. It was a prison, a place where they took humans to break them, to study them, to erase them. Ellen had seen the data. Footage from a stolen drone, men and women in cages, children with hollow eyes, bodies in rows. The Cathar had not just killed, they had experimented, cut, burned, recorded, as if humans were not people but puzzles to solve. When she watched it, she did not cry. She turned to Paul and said one thing. "We go in. We burn it. We bring the dead home." And so they came. Not with an army, not with a fleet, but with fire and knives and grief. The ship landed 2 clicks from the base. Snow fell in slow drifts, silent and thick. They stepped out in dark suits, masks on, weapons tight in their hands. Tom carried a pack full of charges. George led the way, his steps sure, his eyes scanning the ground. He had trained for this, lived for this. The entrance was sealed under ice. Nina used a plasma torch to cut through. The metal screamed as it gave way. Cold air rushed out, smelling of rust and old blood. They went in. The halls were wide, built for Cathar size. The lights were low, flickering. Walls were lined with pipes that hummed with old power. The floor was stained. Dark patches. Too many to be accidents. Ellen knelt and touched one. She did not flinch. "This is human blood," she said. "Fresh. Maybe weeks old." Paul checked his weapon. "They're still here." They moved deeper. Tom placed charges at junctions. Nina watched the rear. George took point. Paul and Ellen followed. They found the first cell. A man sat inside, naked, thin. His skin was scarred with burns and cuts. His eyes were open, but saw nothing. He did not move when they spoke. did not react when Paul opened the door. Ellen knelt beside him. "We're here to help. You're safe now." The man blinked once, then whispered a name. Not his, someone else's. Then he fell forward, dead. Ellen closed his eyes. "They broke him," she said. "But we remember his name." They kept going. More cells, more empty cages. Some held bones. Some held bodies frozen in the cold. In one room, they found a table with straps and tools. A screen on the wall still played footage. A young girl screaming. A Cathar scientist cutting into her arm. The video looped. Over and over, Tom turned it off. His hands shook. "I knew her," he said. "Her name was Molly. She was 8. George said nothing. He took a can of fuel and poured it over the table, over the tools, over the screen. Then he lit it. Fire bloomed, the room filled with heat and smoke. They found the records next. A data vault, locked behind triple doors. Tom hacked the system. The files loaded, thousands of them. Names, ages, dates, videos, audio logs, every human taken, every experiment done, every death recorded. Paul copied it all. "This is proof," he said. "The galaxy will know what they did." Ellen found something else. A list. Not of the dead. Of the Cathar who ran the base, their names, ranks, shifts. One was still on duty, a lead scientist. "He's here," she said. George stood. "Up, then he dies." They found him in a lab, wearing a white coat, scanning a blood sample. He did not look up when they entered. "You are not supposed to be here," he said in broken common tongue. Paul stepped forward. "We are here for the dead." The Cathar looked at them, not afraid, curious. "You are weak, fragile. Why do you keep coming? Why do you not stay broken?" Ellen slapped the screen, showing Molly's face. "This was a child. You cut her while she screamed. You filmed it. You studied her pain." The Cathar tilted his head. "We learn. We improve. Your kind feels. Much. It is a flaw." George moved fast. He grabbed the Cathar by the throat and slammed him into the wall. "You don't get to speak," he said. "You don't get to live." Paul stopped him. "No, not like this. He sees what we do. He carries it back." They dragged the Cathar through the base, past the cells, past the bones, past the fire. They took him to the main hall where the others had gathered. Paul turned on the comms, opened a channel, not to the Cathar fleet, to the whole network, to any who would listen. "This is Paul of the human colonies," he said. "We are at Zarvul. We have found your prison. We have seen your crimes. We have the proof, and we are ending it." He looked at the Cathar scientist. "You wanted to study us. Now you will learn." They tied him to a chair, not to kill him, to make him watch. Tom set the final charges. Nina linked the data core to a broadcast tower. Ellen placed a list of names on the floor. Every human lost. Every victim. Every child. Paul lit a torch. Walked to the center. "This is for Jake," he said. "For Carl. For Maria. For Danny. For Molly. For all of them." He dropped the torch. Fire spread fast. The charges blew. Walls cracked. Ceilings fell. The base shuddered as the core overheated. They left the Cathar scientist there, tied, watching, alive. "You live," Paul said. "So you can tell them, tell all of them, what we do, what we are. Tell them the humans came, and we remembered." They walked out as the roof collapsed behind them. The ground shook. Flames rose through the ice. When they reached the ship, Ellen looked back. "We brought some of the bones," she said. "We'll bury them at home." Nina started the engine. "The broadcast went out. The whole network has it." George sat in the back. His face was blank, but his hands were open, not clenched. Tom stared out the window. "Molly is free," he said. They flew into the dark. Back in Cathar space, the High Command received the broadcast. They saw the fire, the names, the faces, the list of their own dead. They saw the scientist, alive, screaming into the comms. "They are not human," he said. "They are vengeance." The Cathar leaders did not order a counterattack, did not send fleets. They went silent, shut down outer posts, pulled back. Fear had become real. On 100 worlds, aliens watched the broadcast. Some pitied the humans. Some feared them. The Covenant did not speak, but they closed their borders. No more trade with the Cathar. No more contact. In a bar on a mining planet, a drunk miner said the humans were monsters. A quiet voice from the corner spoke. You ever see a Cathar lab? Ever hear a child scream while they cut her open? The humans are not monsters. They are the ones who answered. The bar went quiet. On a school ship, a teacher told her students about the old wars. One child asked, "Why did the Cathar stop attacking?" She looked out the window at the stars. Because they learned fear, not of weapons, of memory. And, in the deep void where no light reaches, a single Cathar ship drifted. Its crew was dead. Its logs showed one final entry. They do not forget. They do not stop. They are always coming. The humans did not celebrate. They did not raise flags. They buried the bones under a tree on a green hill. They said the names, one by one. Then they waited, because they knew. This was not the end. It was a warning, and the galaxy had heard it. Time moved slow in the deep spaces between stars. Years became decades. Decades became centuries. The Cathar did not vanish, but they changed. Their war songs grew quiet. Their ships no longer prowled the edges of human space. They built walls, sealed their borders, posted guards not to keep others out, but to keep their own from fleeing. The humans did not chase them. They did not need to. They had made their point. Paul lived to be old. He died in a small house on a green world, his hands resting on a book filled with names. Nina flew one last mission, then settled on a moon with an orchard she planted from Earth seeds. George was seen once, years later, walking into a desert with a rifle on his back. He never came out. Ellen taught children until her voice grew weak. Her last lesson was about memory. Tom built a monument, not of stone, of sound, a tower that played voices, recordings of the lost. Every hour, on the hour, it spoke a name, a laugh, a cry, a song. People came from other worlds just to listen, and the galaxy listened too. No one attacked human colonies again. Not the Cathar, not the Zarn, not the hive-minded Vex. Even the ancient elders of Craxus, who had devoured whole systems, sent a single message. We will not come near your worlds. They did not say it out of kindness or respect. They said it out of fear, because the story had spread. Not through war, not through conquest, through whispers. A mother tucks her child into bed on a distant planet. The wind howls outside. The child asks, "What if something comes?" The mother strokes his hair and says, "Don't worry, it won't be humans." The child frowns. "Why? Are they strong?" "No," she says, "they are not strong. They are broken. They hurt. They cry. They lose. But they never stop. And if you harm one of them, they remember. And they come." The child is quiet. Then he asks, "Have you seen one?" "Once," she says, "on a trade ship, just a man. Eating soup." His hands shook, but his eyes were like stone. In a war room on a metal world, a general plans an invasion. His officers cheer. One younger one hesitates. "What about the humans?" he says. "They are near the route," the general laughs. "Humans, they are not soldiers, not even many of them." The old advisor in the corner speaks without looking up. "My father served on Viridian the 3. He was Cathar. He saw the bunker after, walls covered in blood, bodies of his brothers piled like trash, and one message scratched in the metal." The room is silent. "What message?" someone asks. "I do not break." The general stops laughing. The invasion is called off. On a research station, a scientist studies old war data. He finds a file labeled Human Response Patterns. He opens it. Pages and pages of notes. Subject does not surrender even when wounded. Subject continues fight after death of comrades. Subject risks self to recover dead. Subject remembers names for decades. Subject does not forgive. He closes the file. writes one. Line in his log, do not provoke. And in the ruins of Zarval, where ice covers the broken base, a single light still blinks. A beacon, not for help, for memory. It sends out a loop every 10 seconds, a list of names, a recording of a child's laugh, a song from Earth, and one sentence. We were here. We fought. We remember. No one knows who keeps it running. Maybe a machine. Maybe someone watches from afar. But the Cathar know. Once a year, a small drone comes. Not armed, not hostile. It lands near the beacon, leaves a single object, a piece of metal with a name etched on it. A Cathar who died in the war. Not a warrior, a medic, a cook, someone who did not fight. They do not leave weapons or flags, just names, an offering, an apology, a plea. The humans never answer, but they do not turn off the beacon because they know the truth. They are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced, but they are the ones who do not forget. A young boy on a farming world asks his grandfather, "Why don't the aliens ever come here?" The old man looks up at the sky. "Because they know what we are." "What are we?" the boy asks. "We are the ones who survive," he says. "We are the ones who stand up after we fall. We are the ones who carry the dead with us. And when someone hurts us, we do not stop until it is over," the boy thinks. "Are we the good guys?" The grandfather smiles, sad. "No, we are not good. We are human, and that is enough." Far away, in the cold space beyond the rim, a Covenant scout ship passes a silent planet. The officer on watch sees a glint on the surface. He zooms in, a monument, made of scrap metal, shaped like a hand, holding a stone. On the base, words in common tongue. Jake, Lisa, Carl, Maria, Danny, all who stood. We do not break. He reads it. Then he turns to his crew. Set course away from this system. No landing, no contact. One of the crew frowns. Why? There is no danger. The officer looks at the monument one last time. There is always danger, he says, when you forget what it means to be human. The ship turns and leaves, and in the silence that follows, the wind moves through the metal fingers of the hand. It makes a soft sound, like a whisper, like a name, like a warning. Because the war was so brutal, so deep, so full of fire and loss, that even the stars seem to pause when a human walks by. They do not rule the galaxy. They do not want to. But the galaxy knows, if you harm them, if you hurt one of theirs, they will come. Not for gold, not for land, for memory, for balance, for the names carved in stone. And when they arrive, they will not shout. They will not boast. They will just look at you and say one thing. We remember. And in that moment, you will understand. This is not a species to be beaten. This is a storm that never ends. This is humanity. And the galaxy will never forget their name.